Let's begin with today's new unit. And this new unit is of I. Richards' essay, Two Uses of Language. And in this two uses of language, we are going to discuss what I. Richards is interested in talking about all those things. Now, before dealing with what I. Richards is discussing about, let us understand first of all the very interesting shift in the literary critical world. Two uses of language is an essay by I.A. Richards, and this is one of the essays from the book called Principles of Literary Criticism. Now, the book Principles of Literary Criticism, he published it almost in the year 1929. And in 1929, when he published this particular book, it was first published in 1924. And this book has changed the whole understanding of criticism. Basically, I. Richards was linguist, critique, poet, and psychologist. Before introducing the term called practical criticism, I. Richards tried to add a very interesting thing into literary criticism. Before I. Richards, criticism was either looking towards aesthetic impressionism, that how aesthetic impression is been carried out in that particular work of art, or we can say that biographical and historical understanding of that particular writer and then his creation is supposed to be the source of criticism. But I. Richards, turning away within, turning away criticism from biographical and historical readings as well as the aesthetic impressions, he is seeking a more exacting approach. He analyzed text as syntactical structure. That syntactical structure, which could be broken down into smaller interacting verbal units of meaning. Because he is psychologist, I. Richards tries to conduct a sort of investigation of the use of language. David Deutsch, one of the very interesting and very important critique, whose very famous book, Critical Approaches to Literature, makes most of the students to understand literary criticism from a long period. David Deutsch wrote that Richards conducts this syntactical investigation in order to come to some clear can about what imaginative literature is and how this imaginative literature it employs language, how it is use of language, how this use of language differs from the scientific use of language, and what is its spatial function and value. Now, if you able to understand what I. Richards is talking about and what he's talking about his own practical criticism, you will find out that I. Richards, who is also called as the new critique, who since Coleridge formulated a systematic and complete theory of poetry, he is being a psychologist. He is able to understand that how this poetry, how this language plays a crucial role in understanding the psyche, how this poetry helps to understand the whole process of imaginative literature. Now, the book from which we have taken this essay, Principles of Literary Criticism, you will find out, my friends, that this book almost consists of, again, as we have seen it about poetics, this book is also consists of 35 chapters, of which the essay which we are going to read is Two Uses of Language is 34th. That means he has discussed before this conclusion to reach to the two uses of language. He discussed 33 chapters about the use of language and the use of all sorts of syntactic structures, how the syntactic structures plays a crucial role in understanding of poetry. Since Coleridge is supposed to be the person who talked first about imagination, that what exactly it means by imagination, and Coleridge is having his own perception about imagination, taking note from that particular idea of imagination from S.T. Coleridge, the essay Two Uses of Language begins with 4 or 5 lines from Coleridge's poem Piccolomini. And in that particular line, Coleridge insisted about the language of heart. What is the language of heart? Because Coleridge in that poem Piccolomini mentioned that the ancient poets or humanities of old religion, where they no longer live in their faith of reason, they use the language, the heart, that need a language. The thing they want to say, the use of heart in explaining all the things to the people. Now, this whole process of using language to reach to the people requires its understanding that how it works. Because if you see the way Aristotle discussed about language, Sir Philip Sidney discussed about language, and the progression of use of language in understanding of literature, in understanding of the creative writing, in understanding of all the works altogether. If you see it, that language has not only a mere role of communication, but it plays a crucial role in developing the understanding, in developing the psyche of the person. Till I.A. Richards, because we are the students of even critical theory also. And that's why what happens most of the time we can able to say and we can able to point it out that we know how language is being used because we studied structuralism, we studied post-structuralism, we studied deconstruction, we studied modernism, postmodernism, and that's why we are able to understand that how language is working and how language worked in understanding of all the human behavior and human psyche. Since we are familiar with the critiques of 20th century, I. Richards' two uses of language, we can say that it is the first attempt to enter into the world of language itself. Practical criticism enters into the world of language, making it, applying it, trying to find out the syntactical meaning and reaching to its constituents and reaching to its minimum constituent called the word, which is used in language. So I. Richards reached to understand and make it clear to its readers that there are two uses of language. And these two uses are totally distinct uses of language. Because what he claims that the theory of language is the most neglected part of all the studies. And in fact, they are hardly ever distinguished that we need to study the theory of language because everybody focused on the ultimate product. Now, I. Richards, while talking about the theory of language, he brought a very interesting thing in front of us that we need to understand that poetry is a clear comprehension of the differences between these uses, which uses the uses that what the poetry wants to say and what the reader is understanding, what the poetry and the narrower aim of understanding. This two things that any theory of poetry uses needs to understand the differences between these two things, and this use is indispensable. You cannot avoid it. Poetry and its aim to understand it. And for this understanding, I. Richards, as I said, he is a psychologist. I. Richards is interested in making a close study of the mental process that used to take place when you try to understand poetry. Because if you understand the poetry, and how will you understand poetry? Because if you don't know what are the mental processes that usually takes place, you are not able to locate the meanings of the words used there. Now it is unfortunate, according to I. Richards, but this is not surprising also, that most of the psychological terms that are used, those psychological terms employ a sort of blur distinction between blur distinctions of the meanings. Most of the time, the meaning seems to be ambiguous. Five words I. Richards tried to put in front of and seeking the different approach towards those particular words. Which are those five words he's talking about? Knowledge, belief, assertion, thought, and understanding. These are the five major words. Why these five major words? Knowledge, belief, assertion, thought, and understanding. Because these are the processes of mind. These are the mental processes through which we are trying to find out the meaning of certain things. Throughout, we are going to analyze the language, through which we are going to explain about language. What is mean by knowledge? Because I. Richard says that if you use this, you're using words, these words are ordinarily used. These words, these words are ambiguous in a fashion which disguises and obscure the point which must be brought out. Why these are ambiguous? Why these words disguise certain things? What sort of things these words carry within itself? If you see very carefully, the meaning of the first word, knowledge, if you open the dictionary and try to find out the meaning of this particular word, knowledge, You'll find out the basic two things. It is explaining the two meanings. One is information, second is awareness. Now, what it means by this. Knowledge, it is a sort of information to us, or it is making aware about something to you. Now, if you are able to understand the meaning, syntactical meaning of it, and how this meaning is applied, we need to point out this, we need to get it out, that how this word is being used, whether it is used in the sense of information or is it used in the sense of awareness, how this word is used. Look at the second word, that is belief. A feeling of something sure. I will say, sir, what is ambiguous? Where are the two meanings? A feeling of something sure. What something means by? We need to understand this something. Now, the something can vary from person to person. What is the belief? And when it varies from person to person, naturally the understanding may also vary from person to person. The third word, assertion. What it means by assertion? To state something into a strong and definite way. Again, the word something. These somethings which we used in belief and which we used in assertion, we need to understand the meaning of that particular something. Because this something is a disguising word which carries certain hidden things into it. And we need to understand these hidden things that the word carries with itself. Now, the fourth word, thought. Thought is either idea or a plan. Again, you will find out easily the difference between these two things. And the fifth one, understanding, to know meaning of something. Again, there is something. So all these words, which are part of mental process, these words which are part of my mental process carries ambiguity in itself. They are not clear cut. They are not clearly giving you all the idea. They are not clearly mentioning about all those ideas. If you see, Richard is going on to consider the connotation of the word truth in criticism. Usually, in literary criticism, you will find out, my friends, the common use is acceptability or probability. What is accepted? And remember, we have discussed so many times about this words necessity or probability when we are talking about Aristotle's poetics. So in literary criticism, when you use the word truth, the common use of the truth is acceptability or probability. Now, how this acceptability or probability, the term truth, which is used in criticism. Suppose in Robinson Crusoe, the very well known novel, Robinson Crusoe is true in the sense of acceptability of the things which are told to us. In the interest of the narrative, whether or not such person existed in real life is not relevant to the truth of the novel. It is not relevant to the truth of the novel. Because whether this person is there in real life or not, it has nothing to do with it. We have accepted Robinson Crusoe, and this is an acceptability. We have accepted the things as these things are told to us. Now, whether that person is in real life existed or not, that is not the truth that we have to find it out. This is not the information given to us. This is not the thing which is given to us. And the sort of knowledge we are getting out of this. Whether the novel is trying to make you or trying to inform you that this was a person, or is it aware, it is creating an awareness amongst you that you have to be alert of the person called Robinson Crusoe. What exactly we are looking at? Because we need to understand oblique the record distinctions which are oblique in the sort of distinctions which are required. There are most of the time cross cuts of analysis. When you try to use language, there are cross cuts of analysis which are supposed to be in the wrong direction, which are supposed to be the wrong cuts. Those cuts are useful enough for some purposes, no doubt. They're essential. Because if you want to know that why these things are appearing in understanding of that particular text with the help of the language that is used there. And the way you have taken a wrong direction, the way you have taken the wrong cuts, the way you have taken a cross analysis of it in the wrong direction makes the things more confused. It makes us very much confused. We are not able to understand it. What Richards is suggesting, we shall do well to put all those things out of mind for a while if possible for us. What are the meanings? We have to keep all those analysis, all those cross cuts, all those cuts made in wrong direction, what with the sort of meaning we are carrying in our own mind. We are having the whole subconscious full of meanings and interpretations of certain things. We have to keep something, we have to keep these things away for a while if possible. Then it will be easy for us to understand the thing, to understand that particular issue. Richards, in this same book, has given in chapter number 11 a sort of you can say sketch of minds, which he says that we need to take a departure from the conception in the sketch of minds. What is the sketch of mind Richards has composed? Richards, in the same book, in chapter number 11, A Sketch for a Psychology, where he made compositions of sketch of minds, compositions in the sketch of minds, which he has given in this chapter number 11. What are those compositions he has given? There are certain points, and on these certain points, new light has crept in. Nonetheless, the new light entered into this certain points. Incoherences and flaws have been found common, have been found in the common sense picture. We're talking about common sense, incoherences and flaws, they entered, they crept into. Adumbiration, rather of the mind, not adumbiration of that particular thing which you are looking at. Adumbiration of the mind. Connections between our behavior, which common sense has missed. These things have been noted, and these things are important to get a general outline of the kind of thing that mind has begun to shape. When you talk of certain things, mind has started to get a shape of that particular thing. When mind had started to make a particular thing, because we have to understand this fact that with a less precision, mind has started to create certain things. For example, When I say water, there are lots of different sorts of images that we can carry in our mind about the word called water. The common sense about water, there is a certain common sense about water, but so many things crept into it. Certain incoherences and flaws are also entered into it. When I say water, you say, so the water in which? Glass, pond, river, sea, where it is. This incoherences and flaws crept into it. We are giving adumberation of the mind. Mind is starting to calculate the things when the word uttered, when the word entered into it. How is this? And mind starts to imply its own understanding of that particular thing. Sometimes this understanding is, you can say, find in common sense. There are certain things which are common, but we start to imply these things to our own behavior, and we try to create a general outline of that particular thing. This outline is created not of the things that you started to understand. You started to create such outlines right from your process of understanding. Maybe it is from your fourth year of life or fifth year of your life. You started to understand certain things, and this understanding of certain things create a shape in your mind about certain things. This is what is called as an age of relativity. You are relating certain things to it. This is a very common thing that every mind tries to bring up, every mind tries to create. And all the mental activities, all the mental events occur in the course of process of adaptation, somewhere between the stimulus and response. What Richard says, that every mental activity or every mental event has an origin in stimulation, a character, and consequences in action or adjustments for action. Now, its character, its character, please understand, my friends, that the character which your mind has adjusted, this character sometimes is accessible to introspection, whether this is right or wrong. Introspection, you can introspect it. What it feels, it feels what it feels like in those cases in which it feels or is felt at all is consciousness. But in many cases, nothing is felt. And this mental event is called as unconsciousness. You feel something. When you utter certain word, you feel something. This feeling is related with your consciousness. And something is not felt is unconsciousness. The mental event is unconsciousness. Why some events are conscious, but not others is at present is a mystery for all of us. Why some events are conscious and why some are not present at that time. Everything that you understood, you try to get it right from your age of understanding, age of relativity. You start to relate certain things with each other. What it means by learning of a language. We start to relate, if you talk in the sense of F.R. Lewis, you try to relate it with certain symbols. And when you try to adjust this character, a character in any literary text, you try to relate it. And the things which you felt is conscious, and the things which you don't feel is unconscious. But why some events are conscious and not others is at present a mystery. That is what Richard's study pointed out. Now, don't tell me, sir, Sigmund Freud had developed it later on. He was talking in 1924 as a relation with literature. Now, no one during that period had succeeded in bringing the various hints in neurology. Nobody in literature tries to bring certain hints which neurology may offer some connection with one another. So we can say the mental events of consciousness and unconsciousness, they must differ with each other. They differs from each other. They are not the same. Now this conception of the mental sketch that he has created, consciousness and unconsciousness, adumberation of the mind, certain things are entering into relating the things with each other. I. Richards is saying that he is taking a departure from this sketch of mind that he has created in chapter number 11. He is leaving that idea. And he is saying that the sort of substitution of the causes, the characters, consequences of mental events for its aspects as thought, feeling, and will. He is taking departure from all those things right now because he thinks that this treatment was introduced with a view to analyze, to create an analysis which now occupies occupies the whole process of understanding with us. Because now we realize that every word is having its own different meaning. Every word is having a meaning which may have an understanding of, you can say, reaching it to different sorts of meanings. And for this, what are the causes? That the causes of the mental events, the five terms: knowledge, belief, assertion, thought, and understanding, mental terms, which are ambiguous in itself, which try to create a sort of mental events of consciousness and unconsciousness. Richard's trying to give two sets of language that can distinguish the mental events. On the one hand, what he is saying, that there are certain present stimuli reaching to the minds through the nervous system. There are certain stimuli reaching to the mind through nervous system, through sensory nerves. Now, in cooperation with these, the effect of past stimuli associated with them, present stimuli through sensory nerves reaching it to the mind, where the past stimuli is associated with it. And you recognize it and you realize it. This is the one thing. When I am saying the word water, there are certain past stimuli in your mind, a shape your mind has taken. And that's why Richards is saying that I'm getting away from these things for taking a departure of what he talked in chapter number 11 about the sketch of mind. Flaws and incurrences. He's taking departure from that for a moment. If I'm saying water, there is a past stimuli in my mind somewhere. And the present stimuli when I'm reading a certain things, when I'm reading certain text. And if the reference of that particular word appears there, the present stimuli through the sensory nerves reached to the past stimuli, and the meaning that is stored in the past stimuli, when it is reaching there, both of them get closely associated, and immediately we are going to get the meaning of that thing. It is a continuous process that is going on in human understanding. This is one thing. That's why I said the causes of mental events, we urged to make a two sets that can be distinguished the things. This is the first thing. The present stimuli is reaching to the mind through the sensory nerves, and in cooperation with this, the effects of past stimuli associated with them. On the other hand, there's a set of different factors. The state of organisms its needs, its readiness to respond, its readiness to respond this or that kind of stimuli. It is ready to give response to all those things. Now the impulses, please understand, the first one is as present stimuli reaching to the mind with the help of sensory nerves, and in cooperation with this, the efforts of past stimuli associated with them. On the other hand, there are quite different factors or the state of organisms, its needs, and its readiness to respond to this or that kind of stimulus. This is the other thing. Now, the impulses which arise take their character and their course from the interaction of these two sets. They can get an interaction of these two sets, either present stimuli or there are certain factors or state of organisms ready to help. These two things, they will choose either. The impulses will take help of this. And we must keep the impulses clearly distinguished. We need to keep them clearly distinguished, that these are the two things that used to take place with us. We'll continue this thing in tomorrow's lecture so that it will be easy for you to understand. Just digest these things, because I think that this is a little bit heavy for us to understand what I, Richards, is trying to bring it out for you to understand. Again, the uses of language and how the mind works with the uses of language. This is what he is trying to bring it out. This is what he is trying to talk about. Let us continue this in tomorrow's lecture, my friend.